Republican, or the first Republican debate concerning the presidential candidates for the Republican Party. We will be watching the debate together, and I will be commenting along with the comments of the speakers. I would like to start with an overview to tell you my general feelings about this debate. I'm very blessed to see 10 really fine men participating. I've never seen such a lineup of such fine people, so many fine people as candidates to represent the Republican Party in the race for the president of the United States, which is coming up in 2016. I'm very blessed with most of them. Actually, I'm very blessed with all of them. I think that it would be very hard for me to decide, well, certainly it would be hard for me to decide based on 3 or 4 of them who I would choose to vote for. We have to be very careful because we cannot agree with everybody. Nobody agrees with all of the policies of everybody, of all the candidates. So we have to really decide what we can tolerate and what we cannot tolerate. For your information, I'm going to tell you up front that I am supporting Donald Trump. The reason that I'm supporting Donald Trump is that I believe that the man is a patriot. I believe his intentions are honorable, and I believe that he is incorruptible. He has his own money. He cannot be purchased. He cannot be bought and sold. And he appears to be a patriot, and I'm believing that he's a patriot for now. I understand that the man is not a politician, and that he says things that, in my opinion, he should not say. I don't think that he should be calling people names, and I think he knows that he should not be calling people names. But that seems to be who he is, and maybe something that he cannot change overnight. However, when challenged with that, saying, Donald, how do you expect to be president when you call people names? His answer is basically that he's not perfect, and that when people are cutting off heads in the Middle East, we should be able to overlook some deficits of the candidate. So that is my reason for choosing Donald Trump. We need to unseat the power structure, not only in Washington, but all over the country. We need to unseat this power structure. It just has to be done. And I think that there's a good chance that he's God's man. At the present moment, I am believing that he is God's man. Time will tell. So I am forgiving him his mistakes. I believe that he's a businessman. I think that he's capable of doing the job. He's fearless, and he's a patriot, which I've said for about 3 times now. So let's get going. Let's get started watching this this debate, and I'll tell you that it's going to start off with a bang. It's going to start off with Bret Baier presenting a challenge that I personally believe is inappropriate. I will make my comment when it happens. So here we go.
Now let's go to Bret Baier, who will begin the Fox News debate in Cleveland, Ohio. Take it away, Bret. Thanks, Bill. I'm Bret Baier, live from Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, alongside my co-moderators, Megyn Kelly and Chris Wallace. With our partner, Facebook, we welcome you to the Republican primary debate night on Fox, the first debates of the 2016 presidential campaign.
Tonight, the candidates you'll see take the stage were selected based on their standing in an average of 5 national polls. Earlier tonight, you saw the candidates who ranked 11 through 17, and in just a few minutes, you will see the top 10.
Along with the 3 of us here, our panel will be watching the debate in the media spin room, and let's bring them in right now for a preview. Britt Hugh, Kirsten Powers, and Steve Hayes. Britt, starting with you. Thoughts about what we're about to see tonight?
Well,
the one thing I think we're going to see is a much more excited atmosphere, because we can tell just from being adjacent to you in here, Chris, that the presence of this sizable audience, which from what we're hearing sounds like the house is full. I know it's not. Is going to make a difference.
Whoa! They won't tell you this.
And I would simply add, obviously, that there are two stories. One is what Donald Trump is going to do or not do, and how the other candidates are going to act toward him. And then there's a question about how all of the candidates are going to fare when confronted with challenging questions about the issues and events of the day. And we'll see if anybody breaks out. We think that happened earlier with Carly Fiorina in the first debate. She did very well, obviously. Consensus choice as a winner. Obviously, any one of these people could use that kind of boost, including Jeb Bush, who's been thought to be kind of an overall front runner, but has made some recent missteps, and he needs to recover. So, a bunch of stories.
Kirsten, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just incredible anticipation about this, partly because there's this wild card with Donald Trump. He's not a normal, regular politician on the stage, and so we're all sort of anticipating, waiting in anticipation to see what he's going to do. And for Jeb Bush, who has, I think it's an opportunity for him to break out and to maybe show a fire in the belly, to show, why he's running, why he's in the race. But I think that what's really, why there's so much anticipation as well, is this is just a really interesting field. It's a very strong field of a lot of people that I think we're all interested to watch, to see. I think we want to watch, Ted Cruz, who has this incredible reputation as a debater, Marco Rubio is this, charismatic rising star, to really make their case.
All right, Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Britt. I mean, I think the real story here is Donald Trump. Is he the Donald Trump that people came to know as the host of The Apprentice, the person who's been sort of bombastic and in the face of these other candidates and in sort of the face of the political system generally, or is he the more subdued Donald Trump that we've seen over the past several days? And then beyond that, is there another candidate who sort of steps up, who has a big night, who says in effect, I'm here, I'm running for president, and I'm the one to watch. And then there will be a third story, I think, as well. Is there a candidate in this field, particularly given the performance that we saw from Carly Fiorina tonight, who's at risk of not being on the stage in the debate in California? Does somebody really bomb tonight in a way that people are talking about?
Panel, thank you very much. We'll check in after the debate. Let's go to Shannon Bream now. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Brett. Well, we have been partnering with Facebook. As you know, they've been measuring political conversation on Facebook the past 2 months leading up to tonight. Who's getting the most traffic, the most buzz? Not necessarily positive or negative, but things like the most likes, interactions, shares. Donald Trump, this is his heat map. Check it out across the entire country. He's got a lot of heat along the border and in South Florida. Remember, he's been talking about immigration quite a bit. So if we go out and look at a very important state, which tonight is where we are tonight, Ohio. Important for the debate, but also important for the person who wants to capture the nomination and go on to try to capture the White House. You can see the top 5 contenders. This is based on conversation here. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, the current governor, who got in and got enough momentum to end up in the top 10 debate tonight, and Bernie Sanders. The top issues here in Ohio, racial issues and the economy. That's pretty much a pattern we're seeing across the country. A big state. We'll see how these 10 do tonight. Brett.
Thank you, Shannon.
It's a fun night because the candidates are backstage and they are waiting to come out, lined up one after the other, just like, you might do at a sporting event. What is it? Is it basketball?
Yes. No, we are in the arena that the Cleveland Cavaliers play in.
When we did our pregame warm-up, we were in the locker room, like the actual locker room. These guys were like, this is it. This is where LeBron James.
I was going to say LeBron James is the king, but tonight we may find out who the new king is. So it's going to be very interesting. I got to tell you, and we've been doing these debates, I have for 3 cycles, I have never seen a crowd as excited and hepped up as this one is.
So the candidates are all right behind that curtain, and they are about to come out. Why don't we bring them out? Would you like to see the candidates? Let's do it. And here they come. Stand by. Come on out, guys. You think they're coming back? Is it coming up with their game plan back there? We have our game plan.
Well, maybe they're conferring with each other.
Yeah, come on out. We're going to begin. We're just going to shout out the names. With Ohio Governor, you may be familiar with him, John Kasich. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul.
Businessman Donald Trump. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker.
Retired neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson. Florida Senator Marco Rubio. And New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And now all of the cameramen are taking their pictures. This is the trick picture you'll see on the front page of the papers tomorrow. All the candidates standing together. We'll see who's talking to each other, who's not talking to each other.
Well, that's awkward.
Well, that was the whole point.
Don't stage the news. They're not feeling it. I'm like, you guys nervous? We're a little nervous too. Fine.
That sounded like the buzzer.
We saved them from that buzzer.
That's right.
We'll explain that.
We'll talk about the buzzer in just a minute. There was controversy. It's good to see you, gentlemen. Welcome. And what do you think of this crowd?
So basically, a moment just so the audience understands and the candidates know they're going to stand behind these lecterns, and we're going to give you the rules, which of course their campaigns have already been informed of. They know the rules, but we'll go over them again just one more time, and the audience will be brought up to speed, and then we'll get started with our questions.
You know, it's so interesting, and I guess they all know this. They've been talking about each other a lot during the previous 6 months or so. Now they're going to get an opportunity to talk to each other. And obviously, this is all part of the process of the American people here in this hall and across the nation trying to sort out who should be the Republican nominee for president in 2016. So this is part of the great American process.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Please go to your podiums. That was awkward enough. Let's get you.
Goodness.
Us and them. It's important to point out that this debate obviously is the top 10 in polling. They were chosen by the position from top to bottom in the positioning on the stage. And remember, we had another debate on this very stage from 5 to 6 that included 7 other candidates. This is a huge feat.
That's right. I bet these guys are glad that Carly Fiorina did not appear in the 9 p.m. hour because, boy, she unleashed a can, if you know what I'm saying, earlier.
It's my understanding that she attacked Donald Trump. I think she also went after Hillary.
You know, that's the exciting thing because, you know, there's been a lot of question, should it be divided, should it not be divided? And yes, there were 2 tiers. There were the 7 lowest in the polls. Now we have the top 10 in the polls. But, you know, it's a fluid process. And it was certainly true 4 years ago. Some that were in the lower tier are going to jump up. And perhaps some that are here tonight are going to slip down a little bit. But there's a long time between now and the snowy caucuses in February in Iowa.
We should point out our next debate is right before the Iowa caucuses, and it's going to be quite something.
This is, I think, going to be very meaningful. It would have been tough to have 17 candidates up here, as great as it would have been to try to find a way to do it. But it would have been like herding cats.
Sometimes I think that's it.
All right, guys.
All right.
So the audience knows we're going to restart at the top of the hour because that is when the nation believes that this debate starts, not at 8:50. So we'll get it going at 9 o'clock, and we'll have a clean start to the show, and we'll take it from there.
This audience has been great. We're going to talk about, you know, the excitement and how we're going to make this all come together.
It is 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and the moment of truth has arrived.
Watch this beginning.
Debate night of the 2016 presidential campaign, live from Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio.
Here we go.
I'm Megan Kelly. Along with my co-moderators, Brett Baer and Chris Wallace. Tonight, thousands of people here in the queue, along with millions of voters at home, will get their very first chance to see the candidates face off in a debate, answering the questions you want answered.
Less than a year from now, in this very arena, one of these 10 candidates, or one of the 7 on the previous debate tonight, will accept the Republican Party's nomination. Tonight's candidates were selected based on an average of 5 national polls. Just a few hours ago, you heard from the candidates ranked 11 through 17, and now the primetime event, the top 10.
Also of note, Fox News is partnering for tonight's debate with Facebook. For the past several weeks, we've been asking you for questions for the candidates on Facebook. Nearly 6 million of you, 6 million, viewed the debate videos on our site, and more than 40,000 of you submitted questions, some of which you will hear us asking the candidates tonight.
As for the candidates who will be answering those questions, here they are, positioned on the stage by how they stand in the polls. In the center of the stage tonight, businessman Donald Trump. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee.
Neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson. Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Florida Senator Marco Rubio.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And your very own Governor of Ohio, Ron Kasich. Brett, I think you would call that a home field advantage.
It might be. It might be. We'll see. Listen, the rules.
Some objections coming.
It might be. The rules for tonight are simple. 1 minute for answers, 30 seconds for follow-ups, and if a candidate runs over, you'll hear this. Pleasant, no? We also have a big crowd here with us tonight in the home of the Cavaliers, as I mentioned. And while we expect them to be enthusiastic, as you heard, we don't want to take anything away from the valuable time for the candidates. So we're looking for somewhere between a reaction to a LeBron James dunk and the Cleveland Public Library across the street. Somewhere there we'll find a balance tonight. Without further ado, let's begin. Gentlemen, we know how much you love hand-raising questions. So we promise this is the only one tonight. The only one. Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump. So, Mr. Trump, to be clear, you're standing on a Republican primary.
I fully understand.
The place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod.
I fully understand.
And that experts say an independent run would almost certainly hand the race over to Democrats and likely another Clinton. You can't say tonight that you can make that pledge.
I cannot say. I have to respect the person that if it's not me, the person that wins. If I do win and I'm leading by quite a bit, that's what I want to do. I can totally make that pledge. If I'm the nominee, I will pledge I will not run as an independent. But and I am discussing it with everybody. But I'm talking about a lot of leverage. We want to win, and we will win. But I want to win as the Republican. I want to run as the Republican nominee.
So tonight you can't say if another one of these.
This is what's wrong. I mean, okay. This is what's wrong. He buys and sells politicians of all stripes. He's already, hey, look, he's already hedging his bet on the Clintons, okay? So if he doesn't run as a Republican, maybe he supports Clinton or maybe runs as an independent.
Okay.
But I'd say that he's already hedging his bets because he's used to buying politicians.
Well, I've given just plenty of money. Just to be clear, you can't make it. We're going to move on. You're not going to make the pledge tonight.
I will not make the pledge at this time.
Okay. All right.
Let me explain to you what's going on here. Donald Trump, he's not a politician. And he really, in my opinion, didn't explain himself. I would like to intercede on his behalf and explain to you what he is saying, because I've heard him in other interviews. Donald Trump is running on the basis of standing against the establishment. The establishment being a group of power-hungry people, men and women, who do not always do what's best for the country, but do what's best for themselves, for their power grabs, for their positions, and for their pocketbooks, and for the special interests to whom they owe their soul because they take money from them. So Donald Trump is not only running to, he's incorruptible. You can't buy him. He has his own money, okay? Nobody can buy him. So he's not only running to take down the power structure in Washington, he is telling everybody that he will not be subservient to ungodly and I'm going to say ungodly powers in the Republican Party. That's what, but then there's corruption everywhere. There's big corruption in the Republican Party. The Republican Party has been selling out its constituents for years. Many Republicans are really liberals in hiding. Their policies are progressive. Their policies are not for the good of the country. It's for their own power. Okay. Our own Republican leaders, Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, have sold out the people. So what Donald Trump is saying is that if I legitimately am winning, and the way you win is by the people who vote. You know, there is an election, but what he's saying is, let me put it this way. What Donald Trump is saying is that to the powers in the Republican Party, if you use any kind of deception, if you use any kind of manipulation, if you use any ungodly, unethical, immoral powers to unseat me when the people really want me, if you use inappropriate means to unseat me, okay, I will not submit to you. And unless if I legitimately lose, he says, I will then run as a third-party candidate. If I feel that if I believe that you did not treat me properly, that you overthrew my efforts to be the Republican candidate, which were legitimate, and you overthrew them for your own ungodly motives, I will run as a third-party candidate. Then secondarily, he said, if I don't win, if someone else wins the nomination, if I agree that they're the next person in line, that you have not used ungodly means to put your own hack in there, he said, I will support that person. If I feel that you have used ungodly means and you have your own hack in there, someone that you can manipulate, I will then run as a third-party person. And that's what he means when he says, I will not give up my leverage. Now, I heard the morning show on Fox News this morning, and someone asked him, what do you mean by leverage? And he really has not explained himself properly. I hope that he does better in the future explaining himself properly, because this is what he's saying, and that's why the people that understand what he's saying are cheering. He says, you will not control me. And I want you to know that our founding fathers were against political parties, and we were warned against political parties who are more interested in securing their own power than the benefit of the country, or the good of the country. And this is what Donald Trump is saying. I'm immovable. You have no power over me. And I will not bend my knee to any ungodly tactics or motives or results that you promote because of your power, because I will then leverage my power against your power and I will ruin you. He said, if you don't do, in other words, Donald Trump is making himself the righteous guardian. He says, if you don't do the right thing, I will run as a third-party candidate and you will lose. And I thank God for the man. As of this moment, I believe he's God's man. If it turns out that I'm wrong, let the Lord correct me. But he's standing against these power brokers, and he's not afraid of any of them. And that's why the people are cheering, because we are so fed up with whether everyone on that stage, all the other 9 people, they're beholden to the people that give them money. To some degree, they're beholden. The country, the people are sick of it. They're just sick of it. And this man, Donald Trump, is standing above the fray. He's standing above the power brokers that rule the country. And that's why the people are cheering. the people that booed him did not understand where he was coming from. And Bret Baier made him look, the motive of Bret Baier was to make Donald Trump look like a selfish, egotistical man who was only doing what he was doing to build his own kingdom or to build up his own ego. And that is the truth of the power brokers in the Republican Party. Right now, it does not seem to be the truth of Donald Trump at this time. So we'll see that during this debate, that there are several questions asked that I think come out of a wrong motive from the people, from the moderators of the debate. And I have lost some modicum of respect for Bret Baier because of this question and the way he set it up and made Donald Trump raise his hand and set him up in front of all of the people to hopefully cause him to stumble, to be upset in his emotions so that he can't function for the rest of the debate. He definitely sought to overturn him before the debate even started. And as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Bret Baier, you've lost my respect, and I think you should be ashamed of yourself. That's my opinion. So let's go on from here.
Gentlemen,
go Donald.
The first round of questions is on the subject of electability in the general election. And we start tonight with you, Dr. Carson. You are a successful neurosurgeon, but you admit that you have had to study up when it comes to foreign policy, saying there's a lot to learn. Your critics say that your inexperience shows. You suggested that the Baltic states are not a part of NATO. Just months ago, you were unfamiliar with the major political parties and government in Israel. And domestically, you thought Alan Greenspan had been Treasury Secretary instead of Federal Reserve Chair. Aren't these basic mistakes? And don't they raise legitimate questions about whether you are ready to be president?
Well,
I just want to say at this point that I think that Megyn Kelly's motives for asking this question are acceptable. And you'll see what Dr. Carson has to say.
Issue with all of those things, but we don't have time. But I will say we have a debate here tonight, and we will have an opportunity to explore those areas. And I'm looking very much forward to demonstrating that, in fact, the thing that is probably most important is having a brain and to be able to figure things out and learn things very rapidly. So, you know, experience comes from a large number of different arenas. And America became a great nation early on, not because it was flooded with politicians, but because it was flooded with people who understood the value of personal responsibility, hard work, creativity, innovation, and that's what will get us on the right track now as well.
Amen. We've become a nation of political politicians. Our nation did not start out that way. It did not start out that way. We need people who love the country, who have, like you said, a brain, who have intelligence, who can surround themselves with the right kind of counselors. But most of all, we need people with morality, in my opinion. We need a man or a woman who will have moral motives, whose intention will be to save this country from destruction. You can be the best politician, you can have the best policies, you can be a genius, and if you're evil in your heart, and if your motives are to destroy the country rather than raise it up, you're no good to us. So Dr. Carson, I have the highest respect for him. I think he's just a fine man. I have to tell you though that after this, obviously I've listened to the debate before this. He really just does not project the power. He's very inexperienced. He doesn't project the power. See, now Donald Trump is no politician, but he's a hard-nosed, successful businessman. He's been involved with politicians and leveraged deals. And see, Dr. Carson, he's a neurosurgeon. He's a nice, very nice man who serves mankind. And I think he's not ready for the office. That's my opinion.
Senator Rubio, when Jeb Bush announced his candidacy for presidency, he said this: there's no passing off responsibility when you're a governor, no blending into the legislative crowd. Could you please address Governor Bush across the stage here and explain to him why you, someone who has never held executive office, are better prepared to be president than he is, a man who you say did a great job running your state of Florida for 8 years?
Well, thank you for the question, Chris, and it's great to be here tonight. Let me begin by saying this. I'm not new to the political process. I was making a contribution as the Speaker of the third largest and most diverse state in the country well before I even got into the Senate. I would add to that this election cannot be a resume competition. It's important to be qualified, but if this election is a resume competition, then Hillary Clinton's going to be the next president because she's been in office and in government longer than anybody else running here tonight. Here's what this election better be about. This election better be about the future, not the past. It better be about the issues our nation and the world is facing today, not simply the issues we once faced. This country is facing an economy that has been radically transformed. You know, the largest retailer in the country, in the world today, Amazon, doesn't even own a single store. And these changes have been disruptive. They have changed people's lives. The jobs that once sustained our middle class, they either don't pay enough or they are gone. And we need someone that understands that as our nominee. If I'm our nominee, how is Hillary Clinton going to lecture me about living paycheck to paycheck? I was raised paycheck to paycheck. How is she going to lecture me? How is she going to lecture me about student loans? I owed over $100,000 just 4 years ago. If I'm our nominee, we will be the party of the future.
I really question the motive for this kind of a question coming from, I believe it was Chris Wallace that asked that question. And I think the answer was excellent. I guess what I perceive is a prejudice against the conservative candidates. That's what I see. Okay, coming from both Brett Baer and Chris. I see a prejudice against the conservative candidates, and I really thank God for Marco Rubio's response. The issue is not who has more experience on the resume. It's the whole man. It's what he thinks, what he believes, what his policies are, his forcefulness, the talent that the man has. So I don't appreciate that question. So I haven't appreciated. I think Megan's question was okay, but the first questions from Chris Wallace and from Brett Baer, I don't appreciate those two questions. I don't think they're appropriate, and I think they're a waste of everybody's time.
Governor Bush, you have insisted that you're your own man. You say you have a life experience uniquely your own, not your father's, not your brother's. But there are several opponents on this stage who get big applause lines in early voting states with this line. Quote, the last thing the country needs is another Bush in the Oval Office. So do you understand the real concern in this country about dynastic politics?
Absolutely, I do. And I'm going to run hard, run with heart, and run to win. I'm going to have to earn this. Maybe the bar is even higher for me. That's fine. I've got a record in Florida. I'm proud of my dad, and I'm certainly proud of my brother. In Florida, they call me Jeb because I earned it. I cut taxes every year, totaling $19 billion. We balanced every budget. We went from $1 billion of reserves to $9 billion of reserves. We were one of 2 states that went to AAA bond rating. They call me Veto Corleone because I vetoed 2,500 separate line items in the budget. I'm my own man. I govern as a conservative, and I govern effectively. And the net effect was, during my 8 years, 1.3 million jobs were created. We left the state better off because I applied conservative principles in a purple state the right way, and people rose up.
I really didn't have much exposure to Jeb Bush up until this point. I didn't know, I had no really opinion of him personally. I wasn't on his side because he's for Agenda 21, which is the federal invasion of the state's rights to control education. But I definitely get a positive response to what he just said. I think that he's a very humble man, and it sounds like he really has distinguished himself. By the way, for those of you that didn't understand the word dynastic politics, what is being spoken about is that when you have 3 men or 3 people from the same family being president, we talk about a dynasty, because a dynasty A dynasty usually is applied to kings who inherit their authority simply from generation to generation because they're the son of the previous king. So the question about dynastic politics said, Mr. Bush, do you think that you have the following that you have simply because your father and your brother were president? Is that why people want you? Because they want another Bush? And he said, no, I'm my own man, and I've distinguished myself. So I think, as I said, he seems like a very nice man. I think everybody up there is a very nice person. There's not one contender up there that I dislike as a person, although I don't like what Rand Paul did. Actually, I didn't comment on what Rand Paul did when I just commented on Donald Trump. I didn't comment on what Rand Paul did. In my opinion, Rand Paul, he was completely out of order. He spoke out of turn. You're not supposed to speak unless you're spoken to. And Rand Paul seemed to have a personal angst against Donald Trump. Oh, I'm so glad that I was reminded to say something about Rand Paul. He seemed to have a personal angst against Donald Trump, and he outwardly accused him of being in bed with the Clintons. Did you understand what he said? He said that Donald Trump is colluding with the Clintons. If Donald Trump does not get the nomination, he now has a deal. This is what the accusation is. I don't believe it. That Trump has a deal with the Clintons that he should run as a third-party candidate, so that the Democratic nominee, which we expect will be Hillary, will win. That's what he's being accused of. And of course, Ross Perot did something like that in a previous election. If I'm not mistaken, it was the older Bush's, the senior Bush's second term, that he was overthrown by Ross Perot, who had no intention of becoming president. He just wanted to overthrow Bush's campaign and defeat him. So this is what Donald Trump has been accused of, with such angst, with such emotion, and Rand Paul also accused him of being on both sides. But as I've heard Donald Trump say in other interviews, he's a businessman. A lot of businessmen give money to both sides. They give money to the political process in the country. So until I have reason to believe otherwise, I am not going to believe Rand Paul, and I have to question myself, not myself, but have to question where this emotional angst is coming from, that he has so much against Donald Trump. It has to be beyond what came out of his mouth. He has an emotional problem with him. And I think Rand Paul, if you would have seen, it was very fast, but the camera went past the faces of all of the contenders at the beginning. And Rand Paul was the only one that was not smiling. I don't know what happened in his life tonight, but I think he came to the debate very upset. And later on, you'll hear even Donald Trump saying to him, you're having a problem tonight. And he is having a problem tonight. He's emotional. He's emotional, which is, that kind of emotionalism is usually associated with women. He's acting like a woman on the floor of the debate. I'm sorry, but that's as I see it. That's how I see it. And getting back to Jeb Bush now, he seems to be a very nice man, very humble, and but I can't get past his cooperation with the federal government. And you'll see, I believe it's Governor Huckabee who answers to that issue. But you really have to be very careful to get in bed with the federal government. It's just a matter of time until they start to control you and to use the money that they're giving you to control what's going on in your state. And education should not be influenced by federal money or anything else coming from the federal government. So that's my big problem with Jeb Bush. So let us continue.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
I have to research this. It happened a few years ago. I think I knew at the time what his problem was with Rosie O'Donnell. But my memory of Rosie O'Donnell is that she had become totally obnoxious. And I haven't seen her in the public scene in a long time. She had become a totally obnoxious liberal. So when I get a chance, I will research that and find out what that was about. But you'll see Donald Trump is now going to admit that no, he engages in name calling, and he should not engage in name. Nobody should engage in name calling. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And when he's elected as president, he's going to have to learn to curb that in. It is a fault that he has, and you'll see maybe it's at this point that he acknowledges it. But when people are being beheaded in the Middle East, you shouldn't be worrying too much about him having a flaw in his character, that he calls people who attack him names. And that's what happens with Donald. And he's made it very clear in previous interviews that he only attacks people that attack him. And you will see that he almost attacks Meghan. In my opinion, her motive for this question is not inappropriate. It's a legitimate question. So he almost attacks her because apparently she touches his underbelly. She touches a soft spot in him, and he almost attacked her, but he stops himself because she really did not deserve to be attacked. Although she asked a question that really touched a sore point with him, but he didn't attack her. He almost did it, but he didn't do it. And I'm really glad that he didn't do it. It's just about everybody likes Meghan. And I don't see, as I said, I don't see anything inappropriate with her motive. So here we go.
Your Twitter account.
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everybody. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time. What I say is what I say. And honestly, Meghan, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that. But you know what? We need strength, we need energy, we need quickness, and we need brain in this country to turn it around. That I can tell you right now.
Senator Cruz, your colleague, Senator Paul, right there next to you, said a few months ago he agrees with you on a number of issues, but he says you do nothing to grow the party. He says you feed red meat to the base, but you don't reach out to minorities. You have a toxic relationship with GOP leaders in Congress. You even called the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, a liar recently.
How terrible. He called the lying Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, who lies, a liar. How terrible. In my opinion, inappropriate question. These moderators are supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be neutral, and they're supposed to be asking the contenders questions that will result in their speaking about their policies so that the people who are watching can make a decision as to whether or not they want to vote for them. And I guess I'm just going back to Megyn Kelly right now. I didn't think her motive was wrong in presenting that question, but what Donald was saying when he said, you haven't been nice to me, she could have thought, I mean, that is not exactly, and maybe I'm wrong about Megyn, you know, that why would she pick out a question like that, you know? But anyway, Anyway, I think that the moderators should be more neutral and that they should not be asking gotcha questions. Everybody's out to get Donald. Keep this in mind, brethren. When you have the power, everybody's out to bring you down. Nobody likes someone with power. Everybody's out there trying to bring you down. Now, there's Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz. My list, brethren, is Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio. Those are my three top contenders. I think Ted Cruz is a fantastic person. I think he's honest. I think he speaks the truth. I think he's fearless. And I think that the moderators are out to bring down, especially the conservatives. Although I think this was the only question that Megan asked that I think is questionable. I have to really think about that. Apparently Donald thought that it was a gotcha question. So this is what Ted Cruz has to say. He's been called divisive because he spoke the truth about McConnell, who was a liar, and he called McConnell a liar. That's how he's divisive. Here we go.
How can you win in 2016 when you're such a divisive figure?
Chris, I believe the American people are looking for someone to speak the truth. If you're looking for someone to go to Washington, to go along, to get along, to agree with the career politicians in both parties who get in bed with the lobbyists and special interests, then I ain't your guy. There is a reason that we have $18 trillion in debt. Because as conservatives, as Republicans, we keep winning elections. We got a Republican House, we got a Republican Senate, and we don't have leaders who honor their commitments. I will always tell the truth and do what I said I would do.
Governor Christie, you're not exactly the darling of conservatives. You tout your record as a Republican governor in a blue state. On Facebook, the most people talking about you, not surprisingly, come from your state of New Jersey, and one of the top issues they are talking about is the economy. This may be why. Under your watch, New Jersey has undergone 9 credit rating downgrades. The state's 44th in private sector growth. You face an employee pension crisis, and the Garden State has the 3rd highest foreclosure rate in the country. So why should voters believe that your management of the country's finances would be any different?
If you think it's bad now, you should have seen it when I got there. Fact is, in the 8 years before I became governor, taxes and fees were raised at the state level 115 times. In the 8 years before I became governor, spending was increased 56%. And in the 8 years before I became governor, there was 0 net private sector job growth in New Jersey. 0 for 8 years. So what did we do? We came in, we balanced an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget by cutting over 800 programs in the state budget. We brought the budget into balance with no tax increases. In fact, we vetoed 5 income tax increases during my time as governor. We cut business taxes $2.3 billion, and we cut regulation by 1/3 of what my predecessor put in place. And what's happened since? 192,000 new private sector jobs in the 5.5 years I've been governor. We have a lot of work to do in New Jersey, but I am darn proud of how we brought our state back.
Governor Christie, I used to really like him because he broke the unions in New Jersey. But then the problem with unions is that there was a time that unions were necessary because employers were abusing employees. But the situation is reversed. These unions are abusing employers and the consumers, and they're making inappropriate demands that are causing the cost of services and goods to go through the sky. But even more than that, their dues is being used by the union leaders as a political fodder. And it's just, unions were just never intended to be that way, or to be used that way. They're just overgrown and out of order, and they need to be broken. Scott Walker also broke the unions in his state, and the result of it was that he got rid of all of the debt in the state, and that state, Wisconsin, now has a balanced budget. So unions are out of control, and they're not at all what they intended to be. And to some degree, they're actually a form of slavery to the people who have to pay dues to them, especially when their dues money is being used for political purposes that they don't agree with. So, I don't know, Christy, I don't have anything personal against any of these men. But Christie, I didn't like what he did with President Obama. I didn't like what he did at Romney's, at the Republican convention last year when he was the keynote speaker. The keynote speaker is supposed to lift up the candidate, and instead of lifting up Romney, he promoted himself. And then I didn't care for him getting into bed with Obama after the hurricane hit New Jersey. So Christie he's at the bottom of my list, you know. There was some talk about Carly Fiorina replacing someone, one of these 10 in the next debate. Well, the way that works is that the polls continue, but by the time the next debate comes around, which is, I think it's after the summer, the end of the summer, it's another few months. By the time the next debate comes around, the polls will once again decide who the top 10 contenders are. So it's possible that Carly Fiorina will, because she won the debate of the second tier, that she will become more popular in the polls than one of the contenders that are present right now. And my opinion is that if she is to replace anyone, it would be Christie, Rand Paul, or possibly Dr. Carson. You know, Dr. Carson, he's very beloved. You know, in my opinion, he's not ready for this, but he's very beloved. But I would say if Carly Fiorina is going to move up, she would replace one of those three: Dr. Carson, Chris Christie, Governor Christie, or Senator Paul. So let's continue.
Governor Walker, you've consistently said that you want to make abortion illegal, even in cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. You recently signed an abortion law in Wisconsin that does have an exception for the mother's life, but you are on record as having objected to it. Would you really let a mother die rather than have an abortion? And with 83% of the American public in favor of a life exception, are you two out of the mainstream on this issue to win the general election?
Well, I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life. And I've got a position I think is consistent with many Americans out there in that I believe that is an unborn child that's in need of protection out there. And I've said many a time that unborn child can be protected, and there are many other alternatives that will also protect the life of that mother. That's been consistently proven. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who has a radical position in terms of support for Planned Parenthood, I defunded Planned Parenthood more than 4 years ago, long before any of these videos came out. I've got a position that's in line with everyday America.
I wasn't aware that Governor Walker had taken that position. I have always felt that in the case of it, whether it's the life of the child or the life of the mother, I've always felt it should be the life of the mother who has other children. That's always been my position. I can't tell you God told me that, but that's always been my position. It's interesting, however, to hear Governor Walker say that. And it makes sense to me that with today's medical technology, we are so far advanced, I can't even imagine a situation where it would be one or the other. Dr. Carson says later on in this debate that he has actually performed surgery on a fetus in utero. What we're doing with medical technology today is unbelievable. I cannot even imagine a situation where both could not be saved. But of course, this is not a medical opinion. So I just have to leave it at that.
Right, Governor Walker, you have staked out strong position.
Oh, yes. Let me say this, that if it's true that there are medical techniques that would make such a situation, one life or the other, a legitimate situation, then I have to ask what the motive is of the persons who would make such an issue. Don't you want that? Don't you want that flyer or whatever they call it, that addition added to the bill that yes, abortion is not allowed except in the case of life or death of the mother or the baby? Why would you want that added if the truth of the matter is that in today's world, medical technology is so advanced that situation would not arise? And if it's true that the world is so, that the medical technology is so evolved that that situation would not arise, then I have to wonder, is not the motive of the persons putting up such a rider to the bill, is that, are they not taking advantage of persons who do not have this knowledge that medical technology would make such a situation impossible? Are they not taking advantage of people who are not educated in that area and trying to encourage them to reject Governor Walker on the basis of his stand on abortion, when the truth of the matter is that such a situation can never arise, but people don't know that that situation can never arise. So the people promoting the bill are promoting a bill that is not necessary to get people who don't understand that to vote against Governor Walker. I have to ask that question. I don't know what the answer is.
Issues, you favor a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriages. You favor a constitutional amendment banning abortions, except for the life of the mother. Millions of people in this country agree with you, but according to the polls, and again, this is an electability question, according to the polls, more people don't. So how do you persuade enough independents and Democrats to get elected in 2016?
Chris, I disagree with the idea that the real issue is a constitutional amendment. That's a long and difficult process. I've actually taken a position that's bolder than that. A lot of people are talking about the funding Planned Parenthood as if that's a huge game changer. I think it's time to do something even more bold. I think the next president ought to invoke the 5th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. Now that we clearly know that that baby inside the mother's womb is a person at the moment of conception. The reason we know that it is because of the DNA schedule that we now have clear scientific evidence on. And this notion that we just continue to ignore the personhood of the individual is a violation of that unborn child's 5th and 14th Amendment rights for due process and equal protection under the law. It's time that we recognize the Supreme Court is not the supreme being, and we change the policy to be pro-life and protect children instead of rip up their body parts and sell them like they're parts to a Buick.
Senator Paul.
Go Governor Huckabee. Okay. You'll see further down the line that Governor John Kasich, who I think is a very nice man, he has no moral power. That's my opinion. That he has no, what does that mean? He has no moral power. He has no moral conviction. I don't know what his spiritual life is like, but I believe, and you'll see it further on, he's lacking moral conviction, and for that reason, I don't think I could ever, I would vote for someone other than him for that reason.
Recently blamed the rise of ISIS on Republican hawks. You later said that statement, you could have said it better. But the statement went on, and you said, quote, everything they've talked about in foreign policy, they've been wrong for the last 20 years. Why are you so quick to blame your own party?
First of all, only ISIS is responsible for the terrorism. Only ISIS is responsible for the depravity. But we do have to examine, how are we going to defeat ISIS? I've got a proposal. I'm the leading voice in America for not arming the allies of ISIS. I've been fighting amidst a lot of opposition from both Hillary Clinton as well as some Republicans who wanted to send arms to the allies of ISIS. ISIS rides around in $1 billion worth of U.S. Humvees. It's a disgrace. We have to stop it. We shouldn't fund our enemies, for goodness sakes. So we didn't create ISIS. ISIS created themselves, but we will stop them. And one of the ways we stop them is by not funding them and by not arming them.
Amen. We should not be funding our enemies. We're living in an insane time, in an insane world, and we have an insane government in our country. How can God honor us? How can God defeat us when we are doing such crazy things? If you fight a war, you should fight it to win. We don't fight to win wars anymore. The situation is really irrational. So I certainly agree with Senator Paul. We should not fund our enemies. Is that not a given? Is that not something that any rational mind would say, okay, too? We should not be funding our enemies. So why are we funding our enemies? Because I believe the administration in power today has a different agenda than they're presenting to the American people. Here we go.
You chose to expand Medicaid in your state, unlike several other governors on the stage tonight, and it is already over budget by some estimates, costing taxpayers an additional $1.4 billion in just the first 18 months. You defended your Medicaid expansion by invoking God, saying to skeptics that when they arrive in heaven, St. Peter isn't going to ask them how small they've kept government, but what they have done for the poor. Why should Republican voters, who generally want to shrink government, believe that you won't use your St. Peter rationale to expand every government program?
Well, first of all, Megan, you should know that President Reagan expanded Medicaid 3 or 4 times. Secondly, I had an opportunity to bring resources back to Ohio to do what? To treat the mentally ill. 10,000 of them sit in our prisons. It costs $22,500 a year to keep them in prison. I'd rather get them their medication so they could lead a decent life. Secondly, we are rehabbing the drug addicted. 80% of the people in our prisons have addiction problems. We now treat them in the prisons, release them in the community, and the recidivism rate is 10%. And everybody across this country knows that the tsunami of drugs is threatening their very families. So we're treating them and getting them on their feet. And finally, the working poor, instead of them having come into the emergency rooms where it costs more, where they're sicker and we end up paying, we brought a program in here to make sure that people can get on their feet. And you know what? Everybody has a right to their God-given purpose. And finally, our Medicaid is growing at one of the lowest rates in the country. And finally, we went from $8 billion in the hole to $2 billion in the black. We've cut $5 billion in taxes, and we've grown 350,000 jobs.
Gentlemen, we're turning to a new subject that all of you have been talking about and some of you have been disagreeing about, and that is the issue of immigration. Governor Bush, you released a new plan this week on illegal immigration, focusing on enforcement, which some suggest is your effort to show that you're not soft on that issue. I want to ask you about a statement that you made last year about illegal immigrants, and here's what you said. They broke the law, but it's not a felony. It's an act of love. It's an act of commitment to your family. Do you stand by that statement, and do you stand by your support for earned legal status?
I do. I believe that the great majority of people coming here illegally have no other option. They want to provide for their family. But we need to control our border. It's our responsibility to pick and choose who comes in. So I've written a book about this, and yet this week I did come up with a comprehensive strategy that really mirrored what we said in the book, which is that we need to deal with E-Verify. We need to deal with people that come with a legal visa and overstay. We need to be much more strategic on how we deal with border enforcement, border security. We need to eliminate the sanctuary cities in this country. It is ridiculous and tragic that people are dying because of the fact that local governments are not following the federal law. There's much to do. And I think rather than talking about this as a wedge issue, which Barack Obama's done now for 6 long years, the next president, and I hope to be that president, will fix this once and for all so that we can turn this into a driver for high sustained economic growth. And there should be a path to earn legal status for those that are here. Not amnesty, earn legal status, which means you pay a fine and do many things over an extended period of time.
Thank you, sir.
This is a big problem for me, although I understand that many of the contenders are for amnesty. I just don't see how the country's being overrun, okay? And it is totally unfair to the people who are coming in legally, paying thousands of dollars for lawyers, waiting 10 or 15 years, and the illegals are just marching in. It's to me, it's breaking federal law, and you don't get anywhere by breaking the law. Yeah, and according to what Governor Bush just said, that he believes that they did it, that they had no other choice, that they had to feed their families, they had no other choice. What does that have to do with us, that they had no other choice? That our country's being given away. So I really cannot go along with this bleeding heart mentality on immigration. I really can't. So between this and Century 21, Governor Bush would definitely not be on my short list.
Mr. Trump, it has not escaped anybody's notice that you say that the Mexican government is sending criminals, rapists, drug dealers across the border. Governor Bush has called those remarks, quote, extraordinarily ugly. I'd like you're right next to him, talk to him directly and say how you respond to that. And you have repeatedly said that you have evidence that the Mexican government is doing this, but that you have evidence you have refused or declined to share. Why not use this first Republican presidential debate to share your proof with the American people?
So if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be talking about illegal immigration, Chris. You wouldn't even be talking about it. This was not a subject that was on anybody's mind until I brought it up at my announcement. And I said, Mexico is sending. Except the reporters, because they're a very dishonest lot, generally speaking, in the world of politics, they didn't cover my statement the way I said it. The fact is, since then, many killings, murders, crime, drugs pouring across the border, our money going out and the drugs coming in. And I said, we need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly. And I don't mind having a big, beautiful door in that wall so that people can come into this country legally. But we need, Jeb, to build a wall. We need to keep illegals out.
Mr. Trump, I'll give you 30 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds to answer my question, which was, what evidence do you have, specific evidence, that the Mexican government is sending criminals across the border? 30 seconds.
Border Patrol, I was at the border last week. Border Patrol, people that I deal with, that I talk to, they say this is what's happening because our leaders are stupid. Our politicians are stupid. And the Mexican government is much smarter, much sharper, much more cunning. And they send the bad ones over because they don't want to pay for them. They don't want to take care of them. Why should they when the stupid leaders of the United States will do it for them? And that's what's happening, whether you like it or not.
Go Donald. Go Donald.
Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about this. We're going to have more questions for the candidates on illegal immigration, plus other key topics, including your questions on Facebook.
What will be your plan to do it legally? What specific steps would you take to contain the growth of ISIS?
I'd like to know what the candidates are going to do so that I feel safe in my own country again.
The bottom line is that the people of this country are being sold down the river to satisfy the social conscience of the legislators. And those legislators are supposed to be the representatives of the people. We're being sacrificed for their conscience.
The illusionists, gold savage superstars of magic.
News Facebook Republican debate night. We're going to continue the questions now on illegal immigration. We kind of ended with a cliffhanger there. So let's continue the conversation. Governor Kasich, I know you don't like to talk about Donald Trump, but I do want to ask you about the merit of what he just said. When you say that the American government is stupid, that the Mexican government is sending criminals, that we're being bamboozled, is that an adequate response to the question of illegal immigration?
Chris, first of all, I was just saying to Chris Christie, they say we're outspoken. We need to take lessons from Donald Trump if we're really gonna learn it. Hey, here's the thing about Donald Trump. Donald Trump's hitting a nerve in this country. He is. He's hitting the nerve. People are frustrated. They're fed up. They don't think the government is working for them. And for people that want to just tune him out, they're making a mistake. Now, he's got his solutions. Some of us have other solutions. You know, look, I balanced the federal budget as one of the chief architects when I was in Washington. Hadn't been done since. I was a military reformer. I took the state of Ohio from an $8 billion hole and a 350,000 job loss to a $2 billion surplus and a gain of 350,000 jobs.
Respectfully, can we talk about illegal?
But the point is that we all have solutions. Mr. Trump is touching a nerve because people want the wall to be built. They want to see an end to illegal immigration. They want to see it, and we all do, but we all have different ways of getting there. You're going to hear from all of us tonight about what our ideas are.
All right. Well, Senator Rubio, let me see.
So there you go. I really think I really lost respect for Brett Baer, trying to provoke a controversy between those two men, trying to get Governor Kasich to attack Donald. It's not the role of the moderator, in my opinion. They should be neutral. That was inappropriate, in my opinion. And to Governor Kasich's credit, he did not bite. Okay, he would not be the agent by which Brett Baer would have Donald Trump attacked and hopefully brought down.
Better with you. It's as simple as our leaders are stupid, their leaders are smart, and all of these illegals coming over are criminals?
Well, let me set the record straight on a couple of things. The first is the evidence is now clear that the majority of people coming across the border are not from Mexico. They're coming from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Those countries are the source of the people that are now coming in its majority. I also believe we need a fence. The problem is if El Chapo builds a tunnel under the fence, we have to be able to deal with that too. And that's why you need an E-Verify system, and you need an entry-exit tracking system, and all sorts of other things to prevent illegal immigration. But I agree with what Governor Kasich just said. People are frustrated. This is the most generous country in the world when it comes to immigration. There are 1 million people a year who legally immigrate to the United States. And people feel like we're being taken advantage of. We feel like despite our generosity, we are being taken advantage of. And let me tell you who never gets talked about in these debates. The people that call my office, who have been waiting for 15 years to come to the United States, and they paid their fees, and they hired a lawyer, and they can't get in, and they're wondering maybe they should come illegally. And so these are important issues, and we should address it. It's a serious problem that needs to be addressed. And otherwise, we're going to keep talking about this for the next 30 years like we have for the last 30 years.
Governor Walker.
So congratulations, Senator Rubio. You did not bite the bait either. You fail, Mr. Baer, Mr. Brett Baer, provocateur. You fail. I've lost respect for you.
Governor Walker, from 2002 till as recently as 2013, just 2 years ago, you supported comprehensive immigration reform, including a path to citizenship. Now you say that was a quick reaction to something you hadn't really thought about and that you've changed your mind. Other than politics, could you explain why in the last 2 years you've changed your position on a path to citizenship, and are there other past positions that we shouldn't hold you to?
Yeah, well, Chris, I actually said it on your show earlier this year.
Yes,
I acknowledge that. I said I actually listened to the American people, and I think people across America want a leader who's actually going to listen to them. I talked to border state governors and other elected officials. I looked at how this president, particularly through last November, messed up the immigration system in this country. Most importantly, I listened to the people of America. I believe we need to secure the border. I've been to the border with Governor Abbott in Texas and others, seeing the problems they have there. There's international criminal organizations penetrating our southern-based borders, and we need to do something about it. Secure the border, enforce the law, no amnesty, and go forward with a legal immigration system that gives priority to American working families and wages.
Senator Cruz, some 1,400 people submitted questions on this very hot topic of illegal immigration on Facebook, and a number of them were about the murder of Kate Steinle in San Francisco, allegedly shot down by an illegal. Doug Betancourt sent this question: will you support Kate Steinle's law, which would impose a mandatory 5-year prison term for an illegal who's deported and then returns to this country? And will you defund sanctuary cities for violating federal law?
Chris, absolutely yes. And not only will I support it, I have authored Kate's law in the United States Senate and filed that legislation I tried to get the Senate to vote to pass Kate's law on the floor of the Senate just 1 week ago, and the leader of our own party blocked a vote on Kate's law. You know, there was reference made to our leaders being stupid. It's not a question of stupidity. It's that they don't want to enforce the immigration laws. That there are far too many in the Washington cartel that support amnesty. President Obama's talked about fundamentally transforming this country. There's 7 billion people across the face of the globe, many of whom want to come to this country. If they come legally, great. But if they come illegally and they get amnesty, that is how we fundamentally change this country. And it really is striking. A majority of the candidates on this stage have supported amnesty. I have never supported amnesty, and I led the fight against Chuck Schumer's Gang of 8 amnesty legislation in the Senate.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to switch topics now and talk a bit about terror and national security. Governor Christie, you've said that Senator Paul's opposition to the NSA's collection of phone records has made the United States weaker and more vulnerable, even going so far as to say that he should be called before Congress to answer for it if we should be hit by another terrorist attack. Do you really believe you can assign blame to Senator Paul just for opposing the bulk collection of people's phone records in the event of a terrorist attack?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm the only person on this stage who's actually filed applications under the Patriot Act, who have gone before the federal, the Foreign Intelligence Service Court, who has prosecuted and investigated and jailed terrorists in this country after September 11th. I was appointed U.S. Attorney by President Bush on September 10th, 2001, and the world changed enormously the next day. And it happened in my state. This is not theoretical to me. I went to the funerals. We lost friends of ours in the Trade Center that day. My own wife was 2 blocks from the Trade Center that day at her office, having gone through it that morning. When you actually have to be responsible for doing this, you can do it, and we did it for 7 years in my office, respecting civil liberties and protecting the homeland. And I will make no apologies ever for protecting the lives and the safety of the American people. We have to give more tools to our folks to be able to do that, not fewer, and then trust those people and oversee them to do it the right way. As president, that is exactly what I'll do.
Right. You see, the problem here is that the Patriot Act is illegal. Patriot Act was passed under President Bush, and it has nullified the Bill of Rights, which is attached to our Constitution. So we see the federal government, the NSA, collecting information from citizens, from private citizens, that they have never done anything suspicious at all. And you'll hear from Senator Paul in a minute. He's saying he stands by the Bill of Rights, that if you want to look at somebody's email or their text chats or the instant messages, if you want to check up on them like that, you have to go to a judge. You have to have some cause to suspect them and go to a judge and get a warrant. The Patriot Act justifies taking away the civil rights of the citizens, and our Constitution has been trashed over the years. I have to tell you that when I was a completely different person when 9/11 happened. I wasn't political at all, and I was naive. I was still naive. I said, "Oh, the Patriot Act. Of course, we have to give up whatever we have to give up to protect the country." And that's was an uneducated, foolish opinion, because I found out what some of the things that in that Patriot Act, for example, gag orders. Our government can go and arrest somebody and put a gag order on them, so they could be in the middle of a prosecution, being prosecuted by a government agency, and they cannot tell anybody. They can't go on TV. They can't ask for help. They can't present their case. There was a young woman a year or two ago who was illegally taken from her parents, and the father was put under a gag order. This is the latest thing, and we're becoming we've lost a lot of freedom. We're becoming a police state. So the father was so desperate to get his daughter back that he went on a TV show and presented his case to the public at the risk of being put in jail. It was his last-ditch effort to get his daughter back, who was dying. She was dying. She was hospitalized for a condition that the parents did not agree with. and she was dying. So he risked going to jail by defying the gag order, and these gag orders are in the Patriot Act. So there should be no possible justification, in my opinion, for taking away the civil rights of the citizens or for violating the Bill of Rights or the Constitution, because it's a slow death. This year you take this away, that year you take that away, the next year you take that away, and before you know it, you have lost your right. And I see that our recording is not recording. What is going on here? We've got a freeze. I don't know whether my voice is recording or not, but we've got a freeze here. So I think I'm going to stop it and start a new file.